Do some. Hey, yes, we're there. Yeah.
Good evening, everybody. And we'll call the July 23rd special council meeting to order at 5:30 PM. And ask if there are any amendments to the agenda.
Thank you, Mayor Lawrence. I have this one.
Thank you. So a motion that the agenda for the special council meeting of July 23rd be approved as presented. Moved by Councilor Lego, seconded by Councilor Timpson. All in favor? Carry. Thank you. And declarations of pecuniary needs.
Thank you, Mayor Lawrence. I have one.
Thank you. Let's get right down with staff reports. So official plan and zoning law review, introduction and project overview. Do you introduce it, CIO?
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor Lawrence, and good evening, members of council, staff, and our friends from MHBC are joining us this evening. Downs and Jamie Robinson, and they are going to walk us through a bit of an overview, an information session, if you will, regarding the upcoming review of the official plan and zoning bylaws. So I will turn things over to our friends from MHBC.
Thanks, Brian. And can everybody hear me okay?
We can.
And loud and clear. Thanks for having us this evening. So my name's Jamie Robinson, as most of you are aware, and Patrick Towns is with me as well. We're the planning consultants for the municipality. And what the intention of tonight's meeting is to give a brief overview of the official plan process that the municipality is embarking on, a bit of background related to the current official plan, and really to advise council about the opportunities that are present for public consultation throughout the process, and to get any initial feedback from council about potential issues that should be considered through the official plan review process. So that's kind of the roadmap and what we intend to do this evening. I think I can see, yeah, you've got the slides up there. Let me just... Because are the slides showing on your screen, Patrick, or is it just the screen in the office there?
Can everyone see it in council chambers?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Yes, okay.
Yeah. All right. So if we can just flip to the next slide, the one that's got the next one, please. There we go. So just in terms of why we undertake these official plans, it's really to develop a long-term strategy for success for the municipality. And it's effectively a document that's intended to manage change. There is going to be change throughout the municipality over the next 20 years. And the intention of this document is to set some goals, objectives, and policies in place in order for council to evaluate those applications as they come forward. And those applications for change are things like zoning bylaw amendments, could be minor variances, plans of subdivision, or consent applications. And really, it's a document that council can rely on moving forward to enact the vision that council wants to achieve from a land use planning perspective. Why we plan is to really protect what we value most in the community. And it's really, when people ask me about planning, I say it's to create the lifestyle and the environment in which people in your community want to live and which would attract new people to the community. So in that regard, it's really a guide and for future generations, and to ensure that future generations have the ability to have a healthy environment, have a good social support system around them, and have a resilient economy. And that's really what the focus of this official plan is to try to achieve. Next slide, please. So just in terms of planning, very briefly, it is a provincial-led planning system in Ontario. Then the Planning Act is at the top of the provincial-led planning system. from the municipality's perspective, this official plan and zoning so the official plan would be approved ultimately by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. So whatever the municipality approves, it gets shipped off to the ministry. And the document that we need to conform with is also the provincial planning statement. So the province sets some basic planning principles that deal with things like where growth should occur, protection of the environment, protection of hazard lands, protection of mining features, those sorts of things. And whatever we do from an official plan perspective has to ultimately be in conformity with that provincial planning document. From a zoning bylaw perspective, the council of the municipality is the approval authority for the zoning bylaw. So how those two documents really work together is that the official plan is the policy document that sets the vision and the guide, whereas the zoning bylaw is the day-to-day law of the land. It's the document that your building official, that Jody looks at when considering issuing building permits in the municipality. Any building or structure would have to or land use would have to comply to that zoning bylaw. The official plan, that's the document you as council look at, or us as the planners for the municipality look at when we see applications to either change the bylaw or change the official plan. The official plan sets the rules and criteria and policies upon which to evaluate those applications. Tells us when an application should get supported or when it should not get supported. Next slide, please. Do one. We'll just go 2 slides down. So the next one was some tests with some the official plan slides. So your current official plan, it was adopted back in 2018 and approved by the ministry in 2019. There's a requirement by the province that these plans get reviewed every so often to make sure they're up to date. One of the reasons they get reviewed is because there's often changes in provincial legislation and provincial policies. And there's often also changes within the municipality and new issues that arise. So it's important to keep these documents up to date so that we can, again, I'll come back to that theme of managing change, effectively manage change. And Patrick will get into this in a moment, but we've had sort of unprecedented legislative changes in the province in the last sort of 5 years, something that's never really been experienced in the past, the level of change. And as a result, there's a number of modifications that we need to make to our planning documents to reflect those changes. And Patrick will get into that. Next slide, please. I won't spend a lot of time on these next 2, but basically you have a table of contents that exists in your official plan. And you will see some modifications to that based on through the official plan review. And Patrick will get into some details about that in a moment, but there will be some modifications. Really what the plan does is it sets out a vision and goals at the outset. There's some general policies that apply entirely across the entire municipality. And then there's your specific land use designations, be it residential, industrial, commercial, those designations that apply to the different types of land uses in the municipality. Next slide, please. The next 3 slides are really just an example of the mapping that exists in the municipality. So you'll see the settlement areas are outlined, Sioux Lookout and Hudson and your key settlement areas. And then you've got much of the rural land is crown land with some pockets of interspersed rural and shoreline areas surrounding the municipality. So now I'd just like you to flip down to this first zoning bylaw slide, and Patrick's going to speak a little bit about the zoning bylaw.
Thanks, Jamie, and thanks, everyone. As mentioned, the zoning bylaw was updated, a similar timeline associated with the official plan back in 2018. And what staff and council have done a great job of over time is completing housekeeping updates to the zoning bylaw. Again, as long as changes to the zoning bylaw conform to the official plan, the municipality can make changes to stay up to date on recent legislation. I can think of examples such as including additional unit regulations in the bylaw to reflect legislation changes. So again, staff and council have done a good job of keeping up with those changes and recently completed a consolidation of that document in March 2025. So the zoning bylaw has been updated more recently than the official plan. I don't think there's a day where a planner doesn't touch the zoning bylaw, whether au pairs responding to general inquiries at the office, or we're reviewing applications, or checking non-compliance matters. But it's a document that consists of permitted uses and regulations for buildings and structures. And whatever's in your in your zoning bylaw must, of course, conform with the official plan. And in terms of items, again, it establishes permitted uses. It includes setbacks. It regulates how the use of land is developed, and it implements those policies of the official plan. Similarly, just in terms of mapping, again, the municipality has done a good job keeping maps up to date. Through the update process, both with the official plan and zoning bylaw, we encourage council, members of the public, and staff to review the schedules. It's important to point out any inconsistencies, or maybe there's a use not accurately reflected in these maps. So it is an important exercise to review those maps. Here's again just an example of urban Sioux Lookout and how the zones are divided as such. So common zones, residential, type 1 and type 2. Type 2 is a little higher density zone, and that's where you permit such uses as quadruplexes and whatnot. I think council's seen many applications for multi-residential development. And then, of course, you have your commercial, downtown commercial zones, environmental protection zones, and shoreline residential zones, just to name a few. In terms of a work plan for both the official plan and zoning bylaw, we really tried to schedule a visit to Sioux Lookout in the summer, but just with schedules, we weren't able to do so. So we wanted to have an introduction meeting this evening just to kind of lay the ground for the two projects. But what the next immediate steps are is a Section 26 meeting that will occur in September, and that's a legislative requirement where notice gets sent out with an appropriate timeline to members of the public. It's more of an introduction meeting that is required and legislated under Section 26 of the Act. We are planning to have an open house, which is the first the public session of the projects in early October. And then winter, we hope to complete the first draft by the winter this year. And of course, that will include review of ministry comments before that time. And overall, we are hoping to complete both the official plan and zoning bylaw amendment projects by the summer of next year. That is a tight timeline, but we think based on the schedule and the meetings that we've laid out here, and potential visits for Jamie and myself to the community, we think it can be done. And as mentioned, we will cover this off at the September council meeting, but there is a legislative requirement to host a Section 26 meeting. We wanted to have an introductory meeting to introduce the projects, the official plan review and zoning bylaw to council in advance of that, but that statutory meeting will take place in September. Okay, Jamie.
Perfect. So thanks, Patrick. So what I'm going to just do now is these are the sorts of items are intended to get council thinking a little bit about what sorts of additional things we intend to include as part of the update and that we've identified, but also might identify some things in your mind that you think need to be considered as part of this official plan update. And we're not saying those need to be identified tonight specifically, but this is something you can take away and provide comments to us at any point in time, or Jody, and he can pass them along to us at any point in time in the study. And certainly we look to hear potential further comments from the public at the Section 26 meeting about what they might like to see in the official plan and through the zoning bylaw review. So some of the key elements we've identified are things that we intend to do here is to update the documents, as I mentioned, to reflect new provincial legislation, and Patrick's going to highlight those in a moment, some of the key changes. To review the permitted uses that are in the document. We want to make sure at the end of the day, the document and the permitted uses in both the zoning bylaw and the official plan are sort of modernized, up to date, and reflect the sorts of things you're seeing in the community. We want to be as, I think, permissive as possible through both of these documents while still ensuring that there's compatibility between land uses where those sorts of things are necessary. Really to build, we want to be permissive, but we don't want to, we want to also make sure there's a level of expectation as a property owner on what could occur around you. So you're not sort of blindsided by potential uses that could exist in the community. But we do want to see if there's opportunities to be more flexible and more accommodating where there's economic development potential in the community to make land shovel ready for those that want to invest in the community. We'll be reviewing the policies to make sure they align with MNR requirements and other agency requirements. We're going to look to see what we can do from a housing perspective to make policies more to recognize additional options for housing and specifically affordable housing within the community. We want some clear policies for council and staff to evaluate applications that do propose increased density so that there's some basis to hang our hat on when we're considering whether an increase in density is appropriate and sort of how much is too much within the community. So we're looking to add some new policies in that regard, update the mapping to reflect new items such as the flood study. We're going to take a close look at the rural residential designation and the permitted uses in Hudson. Noise contour lines for the municipal airport. So those are lines that exist to make sure uses are compatible with air traffic at the airport. We've had some recent applications that have had considerations to those NPC guidelines that are around the airport. We want to take a close look at those and make sure they're up to date, incorporated correctly. We're going to review the lot standards, review parking standards, and really take a look at the definitions and see if there's any refreshes that could be provided in the zoning bylaw with respect to their definitions. If you just want to go to the next slide, please. Sorry, I can't see what slide you're actually, are you on the zoning bylaw slide there now?
This is zoning bylaw, yes.
Okay. So from a zoning perspective, again, we're going to look at the definitions. We're going to look at existing uses. We're going to refine additional dwelling unit provisions within the bylaw. Those are the province has enacted legislation that requires additional dwelling units to be provided up to 3 per unit. We'll also look at specific zoning requirements for home occupations and home industries to try to provide some additional opportunities for local economic development in that regard and where it's compatible with the surrounding residential area. And in the zoning bylaw, we'll also be looking at additional minimum lot areas and minimum lot frontages, and do those need to be modified at all to reflect today's standards? If you just want to go to the next slide, please.
Yeah, questions to consider.
Okay. So in terms of other questions to consider through the process, we would like to hear, as I mentioned, from council. It doesn't need to be today, but we'd like to hear any feedback you have about issues that you're having in your community or in your areas that might be land use planning related that we could try to provide some guidance on for future growth and development in the community. We'd like to know from a council perspective what you value most about your community, make sure to really reaffirm the goals and objectives that are in the official plan, and do we need to make any modifications to those based on community values and have those community values changed at all? Are there potential new economic development considerations in the community that we might not be aware of that we need to plan for and potentially provide additional lands to be designated and earmarked for future economic development type uses or industrial or non-residential uses in the future? So those are the sorts of things we'd like council and even the public to think about going forward and provide hopefully some feedback to us through this process. You folks are the ones with boots on the ground in the municipality, and the more information you're able to provide to us about what you value, what you'd like to see in the community, we can work with you to tailor policies to to help achieve that long-term vision and goal for the municipality. Just in terms of a summary of public engagement, if you'd like to switch to that slide now.
Yep.
From a public engagement perspective, as Patrick mentioned, we'll be having that Section 26 meeting at the start of the project, early in the fall. We'll accompany that with an open house meeting as well. There'll also be an open house meeting that occurs later on in the project when we present a draft of the document, both to the public and to council. And throughout the process, there's basically no limit or no time limit on when folks can provide comments to us. We'll make sure there's an opportunity or an avenue through the municipality, whether it's through Jody or through the website, to provide comments on the process or on items people would like to see. At the conclusion of the process, there is a statutory public meeting, which isn't a meeting before council. It happens like any other statutory planning public meeting, where folks can provide comments in front of council on the proposed documents. So Patrick, if you want to just talk a little bit about the legislative updates now, provide a bit more detail.
Thanks, Jamie. The one constant since the last official plan was adopted is change. The ministry has attempted to cut red tape over time to include legislation to promote housing, for example. So these are just an example of some of the bills that have passed that have some impact on the Planning Act. And through memos to the municipality, we provide updates on when these are passed and when they become final legislation. Over time, of course, we've seen Bill 108 changes to additional residential policies in that 3 units are now permitted per lot in an attempt to promote affordable housing. And your zoning bylaw has been updated to reflect that. Again, we'll take a closer look to make sure everything is on par when we update the official plan and zoning bylaw in terms of those policies. Bill 108 and Bill 23 also restricted third-party appeals for applications. So for Planning Act applications, neighbors, for example, are no longer able to submit appeals. And that's meant just to speed up the process in terms of putting important basis on council's decisions. But neighbors can no longer appeal Planning Act applications in that regard. Bill 13 and Bill 276, for example, extended the conditional period for consent applications. That was previously 1 year. Now it's 2 years, which gives and affords more time for owners to satisfy various conditions before lots are created. And again, overall, the intent of these bill changes are to cut red tape and promote development within municipalities. That's the goal of the ministry and the province, especially from a housing perspective. Most recent bill passed was Bill 98. We don't anticipate a lot of changes out of this, but one item to note is that there's going to be an effort to somewhat standardize official plans in terms of table and contents and whatnot. We think this is a minor change. We think your official plan will be already close to that, but really, as the bill is set up right now in the regulation, you don't have to be consistent with that legislation until 2029. So if anything comes out through this process, we'll be sure to review it. But again, we don't see any major concerns with that. Okay, Jamie, summary page.
Sure. So just in summary, I know we've kind of thrown a lot of stuff at you, and planning terminology isn't always the most, it's sometimes a bit of a dry topic, but I think the key takeaway that we want to leave council with through this is we've got a project timeline that lasts about a year in time. There's a lot of opportunities for public engagement throughout the process, both written opportunities, but also some open house opportunities and a public meeting that exists. We'd really encourage council to consider what sorts of things that, again, they value in the community and what items from a land use perspective they would like considered through this plan so that we can try to design policies to help improve those situations. If there's been any applications recently or over the years that have caused councilors some consternation, and they felt this might have been easier to evaluate from their perspective. If there was some different policies at play, we'd be happy to hear those as well. Those are the sorts of things that help improve the document. So, and the other key takeaways we want to just leave you with is that at the end of the day, uh, the municipality and its official plan does have to be approved by the province, as I mentioned. So we can't just sort of do whatever we want with respect to this. We've got a framework upon which we have to work within, and that framework's been given to us by the province. But we will help you guide you through that process. And we look forward to working closely with council and with staff, preparing both your official plan update as well as your zoning bylaw update for the municipality. So with that, your worship, that's completes our presentation. And if there's any questions that any members of council have, Patrick and I would be happy to do our best to try to answer those. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Council, questions? Well, planning isn't that dry a topic. Joyce, Councilor Timpson.
Not so. Not so much a question, but sort of just some input into what I'm thinking is about where we are as Sioux Lookout. We have lots and lots of people coming and going and transient workers, transient meaning 1 and 2 years. And yet we have a core of permanent residents here, which if we want a truly healthy community, we need to have permanent residents. So my thinking is, how do we preserve neighborhoods as well as increase the density? And I think it was Bill 108, you can just clarify, which would permit more than 2 residences on any property. Is that correct? But if you were building a new property, or if you wanted to put an apartment in your basement, you could have a family up top and a 1 or 2 year worker in your basement. Is that the kind of thing that the province is looking at? And granny suites and all that sort of thing.
Through your worship to the councillor, yes, the province has required municipalities to have additional dwelling units, up to 2 additional dwelling units. So a total of 3 units on a property where you have a single family home, semi-detached, or a townhouse. It requires municipalities to allow for those sort of in the settlement areas and in rural areas. What we would do, or what the official plan and zoning bylaw would do, is specify sort of what criteria have to exist in order to be able to facilitate that. So for example, there would be parking requirements in the zoning bylaws. So just because a property might be eligible for the 2 additional dwelling units doesn't mean they can actually achieve that if they don't meet the parking requirements of the zoning bylaw, for example. So within the official plan and the zoning bylaw, there's policies and regulations in place to make sure that steps are taken to appropriately mitigate potential increases in density. Another example could be that if an additional unit's proposed in an accessory building, we might require larger setbacks from a property line if that accessory building has human habitation versus just a garage, for example. So there's certain things that we can tweak and modify within the zoning bylaw to ensure that, as you spoke about, compatibility between existing residents and neighborhoods is maintained. There is no doubt, though, to expect everything will stay exactly as is, I think, is a bit of an unrealistic expectation as well, based on how the province has modified the planning documents. What's important, though, is that we try to manage that change. And I know I've used that word a few times through our planning documents.
Councilor Cassidy.
I think the one that sticks out to me was a recent zoning bylaw or a recent application where there's a lot that was larger than a standard R2 lot, but the standard allowances for 4 units. I think it'd be interesting if we're talking about ways to increase density is to look at or recognize that all lots aren't exactly the same size and base additional units based on a square meters over a minimum. So if your lot size is that you set your lot size minimum, if a lot happens to be 50 square meters over, it could add an additional unit on top of that. So that would reduce the stuff that comes to us, but it would also incentivize builders if there are large units out there to develop them in a different way as well.
So just so I'm clear, I think what you're talking about is some sort of minimum threshold in lot size, but then also a sliding scale as the bit lots get bigger, you can have
Yeah.
more additional units. That's sort of a thing.
Mhm.
Okay.
Council? I have a few questions and I'm sorry, I'm just gonna, as I've jotted them down, so they'll jump around a bit. Just definitions, will the definitions change now considerably because of the provincial changes?
I'll take that, Patrick. So, Mayor Lawrence, I don't expect definitions to change that much. What I think we're referring to in terms of the definitions in the zoning bylaw is that if there's sort of any new uses that are occurring that weren't contemplated historically through the zoning bylaw that we need to establish, or any tweaks to any of the definitions based on how we've been using the bylaw historically, there might be some modifications, but I'm not expecting like a wholesale change to all of the definitions in the bylaw by any standard. So I
And
think it would be
like,
sort of minor things.
I don't know the definition itself by heart, let me assure you, but I'm thinking now with the provincial changes, an R1 single family lot is now really a possibility of being a 3-unit lot. So surely the definition of R1, it looks like to me, it's fundamentally changed. R2 and whatever similar, but is that covered in definitions or where is that type of thing covered?
Your worship. So to your worship, that doesn't really change the housing style. It would still be a detached dwelling, for example. But where that would change is the criteria. Like we would be taking a look at things like the parking standards, as I mentioned, but we'd also want to take a look at maybe you do need a minimum lot size in an R1 zone to be eligible for an additional dwelling unit or to be eligible for 2 additional dwelling units so that there's some relationship between lot sizes and the type of dwelling unit. Maybe it's such that we're not going to allow additional units in accessory buildings, for example, like above a detached garage in a certain size of, or in a certain location or size in the community. So those are the sorts of things that I think we can use or do and that we've done in other areas to help ensure that that sort of traditional character of the R1 zone is preserved.
I can just see if since 3 up to 3 are permitted now, it may become a minor variance issue with encroaching on setbacks or total lot coverage, not come to the council table. It would be minor variances. I just think how does all that work out?
Yes, there could be additional applications for minor variances in those instances. I think what we're trying to do, what we will have to do is we'll identify some areas where they're allowed as of right, and then we'll be identifying certain parameters where certain areas where they're not allowed as of right specifically. But there no doubt will be applications for minor variances if someone's requesting an additional unit on a lot that might be undersized for that use in accordance with the new bylaw standards. But just like there has been with sort of any other historic request for additional units in the municipality. So
I'll move on, but on this topic, I don't envy your task in designing the plan, and I don't envy our task in implementing it. So, density and appeals. Has the appeals process changed?
so
You've said that some appeal, they're no longer appealable, some things.
yes, so I can just provide a bit of information on this, but from a there's certain applications that used to have that used to be able to be appealed to the Ontario Land Tribunals that are no longer able to be appealed. So some examples are minor variances and consent applications. You cannot appeal those to the tribunal anymore. Zoning bylaw amendments, plans of subdivisions, official plan amendments, they're no longer appealable. The so what's important and is that through this process that we do take the comments that come in from residents and from council, that we do a thorough job in preparing the documents, because there again, as you mentioned, there are less appeal opportunities for the public than what there were historically.
I think of the recent case from, and I think Councillor Cassidy alluded to it, in the R2 zone, it was, which allows up to 4-plex, and the desire was to build a 5-plex. And in a way, it's a marginal increase, but it had to go through the entire process, and then there's the subject of, if it's denied, there's an appeal by the developer, and if it's approved, there was quite a lot of public discussion and input on it. It might be appealed by the public, but the public in that case would no longer have the right of appeal.
That's
That's
correct.
correct. Public no longer has appeal rights. If council, for example, were to deny an application, then the applicant could appeal. The public could become a party to the hearing then, or a participant in the hearing. So that's how the public gets involved still, is when it's a council denial, the public can then get involved in the tribunal process.
You talked about the noise contours around the airport, and at least 2 recent applications over the last year, CN has raised the issue of noise and vibration within, I think it's 300 meters of their property.
That's correct. One thing we would like to do through this process is the rail lines and utilities, they'll get circulated as part of the OP review. And we'd like to try to work with them to have some policies in place, because you are a unique community in the sense of where the rail line runs through town, and that you are going to have redevelopment applications within proximity to the rail line. And I think given that situation, there needs to be some unique policies in place to recognize and provide some opportunity for redevelopment that might not be provided in other locations. So they certainly will be circulated, and I expect we're going to have some discussions with them on that.
Very good, thanks. The another downtown revitalization is referenced in the presentation that you put out. I like what is the area of downtown? Where is downtown to be considered when that topic is discussed?
So
Yep, go ahead.
yeah, we do have mapping that shows that illustrates the different designations, but through this process, we can work with staff and council if any changes need to be made to those sort of designation limits and downtown limits. We can look at those modifications. But
I think it's important in a community that's growing and changing like Sioux, the downtown as a concept isn't static, and downtown as a physical area isn't static either. So we will look at that. You asked for mining. It was yesterday I had a meeting and first goal put at a public event at the town beach, but there's a mining project near Silicote that's scheduled, and it goes, and mining projects tend to not go to schedule, but this one is moving along. And it could be in 3 to 4 years, certainly in 2 years, there could be significant construction just north of Silicote. And in 3 or so years, an operating mine, which would have tremendous impact on Silicote. So it needs to be factored into our considerations in the planning for industrial lands, support light industrial lands, for housing lands, etc. I'm thinking about the zone, the federal hospital site, the current site needs to be factored in. How are we going to handle that? There needs to be consultation with various agencies on what's going to happen on that site and what zoning is going to be appropriate there. A new recreation center. for example, if that mining project went ahead, the impact on Sioux would be significant in terms of population. Our current recreation center, we're looking at it and trying to decide what we're going to do with it, but we need to plan ahead for a possible location and zone appropriately for a future expansion, if not in the next 5 years, in the next 15 years. Something's going to happen. The bubble will burst eventually on that one. Public meeting format, just a question, when you talk about section 26, is that a statutory public meeting as a council meeting, or is that's a public meeting that you're going to host separately from council?
That is a meeting, it's a statutory council meeting that has to happen. And it's an odd thing because it happens at the start of the process effectively, but it's something, it's intended to get some feedback from the public, much like we're doing this evening from council, but with the public with an opportunity to provide any comments about what they would like to see as part of the review. So it's a change that happened to the act probably 10 years ago or so. But yeah, it is a council meeting.
Thanks. And
But we would host that, like we would run that meeting with you.
very good. And this is all happening during a municipal election year, so this council may be a different council as you move into it's just something that'll have to be managed in terms of how that all rolls out. That's my questions. Councilor Timpson.
Yeah, you said that there's a provision that the applicant could appeal a denial, but the public can't. What about, can the public appeal an approval that they don't agree with? At the
No.
applicant?
No, they can't.
No.
No?
No, they can't.
Is that new or?
It's been around for like around Bill 108, I think it was, in that range. So it's been there for probably 2 or 3 years now.
Okay.
That's new.
Yes,
Relatively new, yes.
That's the provincial law.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anything further, Council? So, thank you very much. I'll turn it over to staff for comments. Sure.
Through Mayor Lawrence, thank you. Jamie and Patrick, thank you very much. A great informative presentation. We appreciate it. I'd like to give Jody or Fair an opportunity if you have anything to add or.
Sure.
Through Mayor Lawrence, I guess we just want to add that we're going to try through this process to open up different avenues of trying to garner public input as well as kind of regional First Nations input, just to kind of help the process. Like with the trade show coming up, we're going to have some information available. And we've been working with the manager strategic initiatives as well, looking at some of the methods they use for the strategic plan to try to just to see what's working, what's not, and try to improve on the documents.
I think we can ask for a move for a second on the motion.
So we have a motion that the council receive the presentation from NHBC Planning regarding the official plan and zoning bylaw review for information. Moved by Councillor Timpson, seconded by Councillor Van Breda. All in favor? Carried. And with that, thank you very much, NHBC, for your presentation. Very good. Look forward to work as we go forward.
Yeah, we thank you very much for the opportunity again, and we do enjoy working with your staff on a day-to-day basis on files. They're great to work with, and look forward to getting up there in the fall and seeing everybody again. So thank you.
Thank you, Jamie, and thank you, Jody and O'Pear.
Right, have a nice
All right.
evening.
Thanks.
Thank
everyone.
you. Plan 4.2. Asphalt resurfacing overlay projects. Do you want me to read the resolutions first? Yep. The council receives the public work manager's report regarding pavement asphalt overlay projects, including the Sturgeon River Road condition and infrastructure assessment dated July 23rd, 2026. And further, the council authorizes the transfer of $170,000 from the roads reserve to enable the completion of additional asphalt overlay projects. And further, the council awards the asphalt overlay project for 2026 to Positano Paving, also known as Duval Enterprises, in the amount of $168,648 plus HST. And further, the council approves transferring any unused funds at the end of the year from the public works budget directly to the roads reserve. Moved by Councillor Nago, seconded by Councillor Costco. Discussion. Councillor Van Beer.
I just have one. When is the chip and seal for Fourth Street in Hudson going to be done? And also, when is the Cedar Point Drive resurfacing going to be done as well? I know it's for this year's budget, but we're almost in August. Yeah.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, the projects are out for bid, so we're awaiting that. And once we have bids, we will award the projects.
Councillor Layton.
Do you have any other idea of what other areas need to be done and when we would be looking at doing them?
Through Mayor Lawrence, yes, there's and as will come as no surprise, there's many areas in dire need of attention. We will, as part of the 2027 budget process, we will be providing council with a few things that we're looking at doing. One is we would really like to work on establishing levels of service so that council sets the level of service they want for road condition, for any number of things in any number of services that the municipality provides. And then helps staff determine what gets prioritized, how many resources get allocated to it, and so on and so forth. So I think that's also going to help inform that process going forward. I mean, currently we base our recommendations on the classification of the road, which factors in things like the volume of traffic and its use and how it's constructed and those types of things. So that's sort of also as part of the asset management plan and where it fits in terms of remaining useful life. So all of those criteria are currently used to kind of help determine those list of priority projects. Also, specifically when we're talking about overlay projects, we also have to be cautious that in the timing, so that we wouldn't want to do an overlay in 26 and then have to dig that up in 27 because we're putting in new water and sewer lines. So we're trying to be strategic in that if we're putting an overlay down, we know that's probably going to be good for another 5 to 8 years. And so we're trying to plan the overlays in that regard as well. So that's a very long answer that did not answer your question, but I hope it gave you some additional context.
You good?
I'm good.
Anything further, Councillor Cassidy?
Just on discussion with the Sturgeon River Road there, the front of it, a lot of that, or where it is pretty bad right now, is MTO. Have we engaged them to get them to fix it? I mean,
Engage them.
I would suspect we will be fixing it when they.
I suspect that it's going to wait until 2028 when they come on and finish the Highway 72 at the north terminus. So,
Councillor Costco.
I thank you, Brian, for doing these roads. Like, this is fantastic. It's great to see this. Our community's been really shouting for this for a long time. I was really hoping that Third Avenue would have been in there. Is there any way that there's any extra funding that we could do Third Avenue as well? Or that's missing?
Yeah, through Mayor Lawrence, the issue, Councillor Costco, when I dug into that a little bit further, is there is some significant subsurface work that has to be done there, and it has to be done within the next, I would say, 3 years at the most. Unfortunately, if we put the overlay on that now, we're going to be digging it up in a couple of years to address the subsurface issues we have there.
Also, all in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. A motion that bylaw number 52-26 being bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the municipality of Sioux July 23rd special meeting.
Oh, sorry.
Nope. We had a first, second, and third time we passed. Moved by Councillor Tempton, seconded by Councillor Cassidy. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, Councillor Costco.
I did this when I sat there and held it.
It worked.
Guard,
Yeah, I think.
and then it stopped charging even.
Yeah.